Hi Niluk, how are you?
Good, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Your topic is gearing up financial markets for post-COVID era,
Yes, sir.
right? I sent you two video clips, one on
Yes.
Myanmar and one on Bangladesh.
Yeah, I received, sir. And also some articles also that you said.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you,
So,
sir. Thank you for that.
so can expect some good, satisfactory assignments, right? Ideas.
Most definitely.
Okay. So Mahil from Barclays, is it?
Yes, sir.
Right. Your topic is challenges for money brokers during an epidemic like COVID-19.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So all the articles that I circulate are very useful for them.
Yeah.
So take some finer points and then apply those points, but give credit to the authors, right?
Yes, sir.
Then Sandharwan, which company are you, Sandharwan? Sandharwan, can you hear? No? Kasaba? Your mics are on mute, is it? Can you unmute your mic and speak up? Sandharwan? Kasapa? Welcome, Kasapa.
Good afternoon, sir.
Kasapa, company name what Kasapa?
I'm Pickett Chapman and Company, sir.
Pickett Chapman. Okay. Tilini and you and one other person.
Nipuni.
Anibuni. Okay. So your topic is falling foreign reserves and economic penetration of financial institutions.
Yes, sir.
All right. I circulated some articles. Are they useful?
Yes, sir. Very useful, sir.
Right. How far your progress, Kasaba?
For now, sir, we have already allocate part to others, and
Okay.
then we are collecting some details,
Right.
and with your articles and your videos, and we also get collecting some details.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Are there any questions or clarifications to ask on the topics or on the material that I sent?
Not for now, sir.
Thank you. I
Okay,
must
sir.
come on the Bangladesh. There's a success story. If you read the web page on that, basically when Bangladesh economy was worse than Sri Lanka about few months back, what they have done to change and turn around. Basically, one point I can give you, what they have done is they have managed to, there's a huge population more than very much higher population than in Sri Lanka. I guess it's about 3-4 times or more, even 7-8 times of total Sri Lankan population in Bangladesh. But they managed to, on the entrepreneurial side, especially on the small and medium scale industries, they managed to change the attitude of the people. Now, I have suggested subheading like mindfulness, right? So that's a good example there. When people do act differently to the declared goals of economic development, when the people act differently, they must be given reasons and why they should do better, or why they should change their attitude and then work for better. So that's one of the key points that you should take from Bangladesh article. All right. Okay, so I think last week's presentation, there are about 4 or 5 slides to be covered. I think we came up to this. We covered these risk indicators on benchmark. Now, we were talking of particularly the asset and liability dimension, asset and liability management dimension of Treasury last week. And from here, there are about 4 or 5 slides to be covered on that and completed. Basically, Treasury operations, we discussed that it is covering the entire resource pool available to a company. It is true that when loans and advances are granted and when they are in plenty, up to about 60, 70, 80% of the balance sheet, the credit decision is by the credit department, but the pricing decisions are by the Treasury. So therefore, organization structure-wise, Treasury encompasses the entire intermediation function relating to banking book activities. Now, banking book activities are taking deposits and then on lending to borrowers, subject to accrual accounting and contrary to trading book. Trading book is by far the entire thing is under the management of the Treasury. Trading book, whether buying Treasury bills or buying and selling Treasury bills and bonds, and then stock market activities. There can be an investment arm, investment department separately, but overall, it is under Treasury for management, starting from the point of acquiring or annexing the asset to the balance sheet, up to disposal or maturity proceeds being received. Now, I must tell you that when we cover these aspects, you all as money brokers sometimes might think that there is less chance for you to get involved in these areas. However, I can assure you that once you complete this course, you will have better knowledge than even the bankers to whom you are giving your service. So therefore, please don't think that these are too deep and these are too conceptualized or these are in-depth material for you all. No, it's not so. Once you understand the functionalities and the structure of banks and then primary dealers and others to whom you are servicing, then you are equipped with in-depth knowledge of their operations so that you could think of new avenues to support their goals, support them to achieve their goals. So in a small financial institution, treasury may be 1 or 2 persons. But in large institution, it is a separate profit center. It's a separate profit center. You know, as you might have known before, or you might understand better, where each branch and each business unit in a bank or in a large organization is taken as a profit center or loss center. Loss center means they are only a service oriented, like for example, HR division. HR division will have no revenues to contribute, but they will have to take finer decisions, critical decisions in hiring employees suitable for the task that is vacant, the task or the position that is vacant. So to tell you the least, it may not be appropriate for a maths graduate to be taken, recruited and put to the service of the HR division or any other regional office, or a maths graduate may be best suited to a finance department or a treasury department. So likewise, there are the graduates from universities who are being recruited to these financial institutions. Depending on their capabilities and the skills and the knowledge, assigning them to the correct position is the critical task of the HR division. So therefore, this profit center, loss center concept, the profit centers are named because they can generate revenue. Now, branches are profit centers. And maybe trade finance department is a profit center. And credit department or credit administration department are profit centers. So likewise, and leasing department may be a profit center. Pawning department is a profit center. So each and every unit is costed, in other words. The salaries and wages paid and overheads incurred. So that is one way to control the overheads and deploy the resources to better positions to generate income for the organization. Then finance department and risk department have separate functions. Finance department is the owner of the pool of the funds. So there should be a measurement of revenue and the performance against the targeted profits and then other benchmarks such as market share. So therefore, ideally, the treasury back office is brought under finance department. Then the risk management department too can be argued that it is a loss center, but actually speaking, their underlying function is to minimize losses and maximize profits. Risk management department will have to identify wherever the loss events and loss-making departments and positions, and then guiding them or giving recommendations to make the losses as low as possible or minimize the losses. And at the same time, when there are portfolios and branches and other units which are maybe gradually reaching the profit levels or they are making small margins, but the risk management department should be in a position to advise them to make more profits, maximize the profits. And if at all, if any individual employed in such a department, if they are not capable of making, or if their intention is not to make profits, then they must be counseled. They must be engaged with a discussion. And finally, if they are reviving, or if they are coming to terms and then making profits, that's okay. But if at all, if they are not, if they are found that they are not making progress, willingly or unwillingly, then it is up to the risk management department and the compliance department to recommend to the HR and then also to the senior management and the board to either remove such staff or transfer such staff to a suitable other places and make the organization more profitable. In my banking career, I have done few assignments like that. When we found certain dealers in a treasury was not willing to take the risk of buying treasury bills and bonds and investing in them when there was when there's adequate and plenty of liquidity available, because of the fear of risk, we had to engage them with a discussion. Finally, when they were not willing to take that risk, we had to move them to different departments where their services can be more useful for the bank. And then finally, we were able to employ people who could engage themselves with active trading in fixed income securities. This happened because a comparative study was undertaken between the similar size peer banks, where they were making billions and billions of capital gains. This particular institution and this particular individual couldn't make more than 100 million when others were making 1 billion and more. So like that, the finance department has to look after their function. Then the risk department has to also do whilst assimilating data and then measuring the risk. There is a supervisory function. Then compliance department have the overall supervisory role of all these units, including the audit department as well. Compliance department will have the responsibility of calling for and then studying the audit program of the audit department, maybe internal audit department. And then if they are not carrying out proper successful audits, and at the same time, if they are not producing the audit reports in time for proper decision making, then compliance department will have to engage the auditors in a discussion and finally do the necessary changes, if at all, to make it successful. Tasks. Measure financial risk exposure and then report to ALCO. Vault cash monitoring. As you know, vault cash is a costly affair. Maintenance of vault cash, it is compulsory because all the savings deposit customers and the current account deposit customers will have to be paid on demand on a daily basis as and when they want to withdraw. However, keeping vault cash is costly because loss of interest on one hand. Secondly, there is need for insuring the amount of vault cash, that is, insurance premium has to be paid. Then thirdly, there is a requirement of providing security with the security guards. So hiring security guards is another additional cost. And then fourthly, there is whenever vault cash has to be moved to separate branches, departments, and counters, there is cash in transit insurance cover separate. So these are costly affairs and has to be done with proper balancing act. Then analyze and forecast future scenarios and report to ALCO. Then analyzing and forecasting future scenario forecasting, depending on the market conditions and then impending political and then economic developments. Now these days, for example, we have seen the interest rates coming down from about 18 to 24 months ago, from about 12% to about 5-6%. Then again, from the last 2-3 weeks, we have seen a little bit of uptrend where the treasury bills and treasury bond auctions recording higher trend. Some upticks have been shown. So therefore, such macroeconomic variable changes has to be taken seriously and analyze and forecast future scenarios and report to the ALCO. Then maintain good contracts with the correspondents. It's a very important thing. Correspondents are your business partners, or in other words, you can call them counterparties. Not only the counterparties for the treasury transactions, forex and money market, but there are counterparties for trade finance, LC issuance and confirmation and adding confirmations and so on and so forth. And there are other correspondents who would work with the organization for issuance of credit card, settling credit card, international cards, and then also leasing facilities. And then for large project loans and corporate credit approvals and granting of syndication and various other transactions. So correspondence, managing correspondence is a different art altogether. You have to have extremely good public relation capabilities and correspondence skills. Then diversifying the correspondent network. This particular job is handled by the correspondent banking department, with an independent authority with approval by the top management. Then purchasing or selling short-term liquidity instruments such as treasury bills, that you understand that there is a direct job of the treasury. Then negotiate and purchase short-term borrowing such as credit lines, overdrafts, interbank loans. I was thinking for a moment. Now, these particular business lines, money brokers also could get involved when particular banks and other financial institutions need to arrange credit lines, overdrafts with banks and interbank loans. I guess you get involved with the interbank placements for longer periods, all right. But along with other corporates and other large financial institutions to small financial institutions, I think your scope can be, or functionality can be expanded. Particularly when at a time now when we are recovering from the pandemic economic lows or economic crunches, the contribution by the small and medium scale entrepreneurs are highly valued. So as money brokers, I think you have a golden opportunity to find such people and then helping them to arrange these credit lines, overdrafts, bank placements, and SME loans. And if they have taken already borrowings from the banks, the negotiating and structuring the moratoriums that have been announced by the central bank for such borrowers. I think you have a good business angle as well. One might get up and tell me that there have been some endeavors in the past and then they have been shot down on the arm when such moves were presented. But however, money brokering, in my personal understanding, involves such things. So it is true that you might step into the certain banks' internal territory, but you don't need to peep into their balance sheets and all that when it comes to the banks. But however, assisting such small and medium scale entrepreneurs by your financial advisory and for your companies to earn some commissions and fee-based income is certainly a done thing, and even the government would welcome such move, in my opinion. They negotiate and purchase hedging instruments. There again, you could get involved using your skills, using your understanding of the hedging instrument, help them to choose the appropriate and then suitable hedging instrument, and then to structure such instrument with a suitable banker. So such activities also can be examined and then adapted. Communicate with top management regarding strategic and business decisions which have treasury implications. Example, savings mobilizations, sale of shares, etc., etc. The long-term strategic capital deals are handled by treasury only after approval by top management. So the strategic capital deals, capital loans and capital syndications, capital raising also can be assisted by the money brokers, provided you have the adequate knowledge and the contacts. Then transfer pricing of internal funds. We are going to discuss that in the next 2 slides. Transfer pricing, as I told you before, each and every unit under the financial institution has to be costed. And then their income has to be compared with the cost. And then finally, their contribution by of rupees and cents to the entire organization has to be evaluated, measured, right? To do that, this transfer pricing, please learn these terms, transfer pricing. Transfer pricing means, I have taken this pictorial example. If there are 2 branches in a financial institution and also a treasury who's in charge of the pool of funds, handling of the funds, conceptually, one branch might obtain custom deposit. And these days, shall we say, customer has to be paid 5% interest. So that's the interest cost of 5%. Then branch A transfers that money to the treasury at 7%. Then the branch gets 2%. Branch pays out 5% to the customer. A total of 7% is obtained from treasury to the branch A, so that there's a 2% margin as encouragement for to acquire more deposits. Then the branch P&L will show that 2% as a profit, and then more and more deposits mobilized. they will get that 2% of total volumes as and indicate their P&L as a branch as a profit. So branch is a profit center. Then after having obtained funds from branch A at 7%, there is another branch who entertain a loan from a customer, loan to a customer. So the branch, the treasury passes on the funds to the branch B to be on lent to the customer at 9%. So the treasury will keep 2%. Now, mind you, why should the treasury will keep money? Because there's an argument that treasury does nothing about the deposit or the loan. It's most likely that the treasury will have to keep the statutory reserve requirement with the central bank, which is costing about 1 to 1.2%. Plus, treasury has to maintain other liquid asset ratios and other ratios also. So in doing so, treasury will incur additional costs. Saying that, I'll come back to this treasury point later. Then the treasury lends money to branch B at 9%. 9%. So the branch B lends the money to the borrower, customer or company at 11%. So branch B also get 2%. Now in this example, branch A, treasury and branch B, all three units are kept 2% each. So equal sharing of total spread. But here, when you take overall picture, deposit customer is paid 5%, whereas borrowing customer has to pay the bank 11%. So 11% minus 5% is the total intermediation cost of this entire organization, financial institution, which is considered too high. It is considered too high. So therefore, it has to review and then adjust if they are to attract more customer business, and then both on the depositors side and then also borrower side. So what I said about the treasury is that treasury is also supposed to be a profit center. Now you understand clearly that branch A is a profit center, branch B is a profit center. But treasury is also supposed to be a profit center. But in this pricing or transfer pricing mechanism, treasury need not keep any profit margin other than the SRR cost and the maintenance of liquid asset ratio cost, because treasury does not add value for anything. Now, for example, the branch A could have lent direct to the branch B avoiding treasury. But for internal management convenience only, treasury had come into the play to look after the pool of funds or to invest and then manage the pool of funds of the financial institution. So therefore, actually the treasury need not be given any margin here, profit margin. But in that case, from where are the treasury going to make money for it to be called a profit center? It has to make money from using its skill, like trading activities, like buying and selling foreign exchange in the market, and then buying treasury bills and bonds, and selling treasury bills and bonds, doing repos, doing swaps, and then it has to put some effort and then the brain and then the skills of handling, and then only they have to make profits. In most cases, such profits made by the treasury could be a lion's share in the profit and loss statement of a financial institution. The intermediation cost between the deposit rate and the lending rate is supposed to be the core income of a financial institution, but the fee-based income generated by the treasury in some cases exceeds that core income. If the treasury fellows are skilled and then they are able to handle the transactions skillfully with experience. So this is equal sharing of total spread that I put the term on top, because all these units, they are kept 2%, 2%, 2% each. But in the next slide, there is a matching or match rate transfer pricing, matched in the sense they have to match with the current role that they play. Now, if depositors are being paid 5% by all the banking system, and then if that is the market, they have to be paid 5%. If you pay 4% or 3%, then there will be less deposits coming in. You have to compete in the market to attract more deposits. So branch A has to acquire deposit at the market rate, 5%. Then the branch A has to transfer the funds to treasury, giving them 1% margin, giving branch A 1% margin. So it will be at 6%. Because in this case, borrowing funds from other banks, which the treasury does, also may be at 6%. So therefore, treasury cannot pay 7% to the branch A, because treasury can procure or borrow money from interbank or money market or long-term fund placings, long-term borrowings on the market at 6% level. So why should the treasury pay 7% to the branch A? So therefore, it has to match that particular product or availability of funds. So then branch A can be given only 1% margin. So then treasury then passes on those funds to branch B to be on lend to a customer at 7%, whereas 1% only can be kept by the treasury. Now, the SRR had been lowered to 2%, and then from about a month ago, it was raised again to 4%. So therefore, SRR cost is supposed to be something like 0.6 or 0.7. So in that case, treasury also need not keep 2% here. So the treasury can keep 1%, including the cost of maintaining the liquid asset ratios. So then treasury lends that money to branch B at 7%. So therefore, treasury keeps only 1% to cover its cost of maintenance of SRR and liquid asset ratio. Then finally, branch B lends the money to the borrower at 10%, keeping a 3% margin for the branch B. Why? Because the type of loan that they grant to the customer, the market rate is around 10%. So therefore, it's a match rate with the market products. So therefore, if the match rate by any chance comes down to 9%, then the branch B can keep only 2% margin and then lend at 9%. So that's how match rate transfer pricing is determined. Match rate transfer pricing is determined. So in all these cases, in these transactions, branch B has to use the market match rate for transfer pricing and then contribute to the P&L of the branch plus the overall P&L of the bank or the financial institution. The treasury has to cover its cost or maintain the SRR and liquidity ratio. And then if at all, it can keep about a fraction of margin for an overhead cost. Then the branch A can acquire the funds from savers or deposit customers at 5%, or if the market will drop to 3.5% or 4%, it has to price at that level. And then it has to match the rate that the treasury can borrow from the other markets or lower. So this, I guess you understood properly how the internal transfer pricing mechanism works. Okay, that's it on these slides. Did you understand this concept very well? Yes? Or are there any questions? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good, good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Are there any questions or comments on this transfer pricing? No? Yes? If there's anything that you didn't understand, please ask so that others also can be benefited. These are finer points in treasury management, which sometimes even the staff at the large financial institutions with complex treasury activities, those staff also sometimes may not understand properly, but they are very simple when you really analyze and then to see why and how the respective units are functioning and why there should be a profit margin kept at each unit, and finally how the entire organization's P&L get contributed to the whole process. Even in this match rate transfer pricing example, the deposit customers are paid 5% and the bank charges from the borrowing customer at 10%. So this spread of 5%, 10 minus 5, 5% is also considered huge or large. But for explanation purposes, arithmetically, I just chose these numbers. You all may have heard that there is a lot of criticism that the bankers are keeping hefty margins. Hefty margins. Why should they keep hefty margins? Because they do take huge risk. At the same time, the risks undertaken has to be priced. However, the question remains that they are pricing the risk, that the risk premiums that they take are in excessive or are they adequate? But when you compare this with the developed financial centers like London, New York, Frankfurt, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and then Tokyo, these margins kept by the banking fraternity, it could be half of this. Why? Because there are ways and other means of hedging these risks. There are financial instruments that they can use to hedge these risks that individual units are taking as a whole, as a bank or as a financial institution. In Sri Lanka, we don't have such instruments to hedge. So when a financial institution runs a huge deposit portfolio, if they can buy or sell options or futures or any other financial derivative to safeguard such pricing, then they need not lend at 10% to any prospective borrower. At the same time, when they have a loan portfolio giving them an average of 10%, when there is a market fluctuations upwards or downwards, whether the availability of option contracts on interest rates and futures contracts on interest rates, if they're available, they can definitely reduce this margin from 10 minus 5 to about 8 minus 5 or 7 minus 5, because you may have heard in developed countries, people can obtain housing mortgage loans fixed for 25 years at sometimes at the treasury bill rate for about 25 years. So that is because those housing mortgage houses, lending authority, lending institutions, they use interest rate options and interest rate futures to hedge their portfolio. So such activity, unfortunately, is not available in Sri Lanka yet. So if that kind of derivative market can be created in Sri Lanka as well, you all as money brokers also can be playing a part in arranging such transactions. So basically, there'll be more activities. Okay. I hope you all understood that part. Then let us go to the next set of slides. Cash management. Cash management is basically, again, is a total business of treasury.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So previous presentation, no, they have not uploaded in the Google Class yet. Treasury management.
Okay. Is Menaka listening? Menaka? And I'll remind him to update it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Upload it. Okay. Okay, matter resolved. Thanks for pointing out. Then now I just want to know whether you all are taking notes as and when we discuss slide by slide. You should be taking notes, right? Yes? No? Anyway, please take notes because I might put down on slides certain things, but in my explanations, I might come across, I might be explaining more depth, more points. Those additional points may not be in the slides. Anyway, under cash management, what we have to discuss is, as usual, introduction, then cash flow forecasting, transactions when they are booked and assumptions, working capital management, liquidity management, and use of instrument to manage risks. Introduction to cash management. Cash management is the most important treasury management discipline. As we discussed in the previous weeks, that out of the total pool of funds, 60 to 75% are loans and advances. Then another 10-15% are investment portfolio. Another 10 to 15% are liquid funds managed by the treasury. So this liquid management of funds is basically the cash management. They involved not only the vault cash, but also in commercial banks when their customers issue checks and then pay other customers, others in the economy, and those checks can be obtained by the customers of other banks. Finally, when they come and go to their bank and deposit, those checks had to get into the clearing process, Lanka Clear. Lanka Clear, as I explained the other day, they take the image, the face, and the reverse of the check. Reverse covers the endorsements, and the face of the check will have the beneficiary and the amount and the currency and the signature. So these checks, then images of the checks are truncated to Lanka Clear. Then Lanka Clear sends them to the bank who originally issued the checkbook. So finally, that particular customer who issued the check, his account is debited and the funds transferred to the account of the customer who deposited the check into his bank. So such volumes in large banking institutions, in millions and billions of checks are interchanged on a daily basis. So therefore, that's also part of cash management. Then also there are other instruments like direct outward remittances, inward remittances. And then these days you have this sort of various internet banking apps. Now Sampath Bank has Sampath Vishwa, HNB has Solo, and HNB online banking. Commercial also has Combank or online banking systems. And Bank of Ceylon, People's Bank, almost all the banks have. So such funds has to be transferred, managed, the transferring of such funds has to be managed by each bank through the respective central bank account. And to assist such cash management only, the RTG system of the central bank and the SLIPS system of the Lanka Clear and the SEFT system, Common Electronic Fund Transfer System of Lanka Clear, helps these banking institutions, the financial institutions. Actually, such effective payment systems available in Sri Lanka is comparable to most developed financial markets in the world today because they were developed in Sri Lanka or installed in Sri Lanka by the central bank with the highest sophistication that a country needs. Especially India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives, and Philippines, and even Thailand, and then these countries may not have such robust and then comprehensive systems to transfer funds. The fund transfer mechanism is very well established in Sri Lanka, so therefore that credit must go to the central bank for initiating and then arranging such payment systems for the use of the entire population, not only in Sri Lanka, but anybody from rest of the world as well, anybody who wishes to transact in Sri Lanka or use such systems in Sri Lanka, they are free to do so. And they function very efficiently so that the benefits goes to the entire economy. But despite that, the such provision of such robust payment and settlement systems, Sri Lanka is yet to attract foreign direct investments because of other reasons like weak the political system or some other infrastructure management systems. So, however, when it comes to cash management, Sri Lankans are at an advantage position to use the already implemented efficient payment and settlement systems. So cash management is an active management of a company's or an individual's short-term resources to sustain ongoing activities, mobilize funds where needed, and optimize liquidity. And the cost matters. All of this should be done at the lowest possible cost. So the cost matters. If there is comparatively higher cost, then the purpose is defeated. So, but all this happens at a comparatively low cost in Sri Lanka. Principle of cash management. A company can improve its chances of having adequate cash by following basic principle of cash management. A company or an individual can improve its chances of having adequate cash by following basic principles of cash management. Increase the speed of collection of receivables. The more quickly customers pay, the more quickly a company can use those funds. Example, the banks and finance companies lend money. The borrowers are expected to repay by way of installments, basically on a monthly basis or any other period that the bank and the financial institution and the borrowing customer agreed upon on a contractual agreement. So if by any chance the borrowers does not pay as agreed, say example monthly repayments, from the beginning or from after paying a few months, if the borrower is unable to intentionally or unintentionally does not pay every month, then the cash management of the financial institution who lent the money is going to be extremely difficult. The non-performing advances or NPA levels is going to rise. That is because the central bank as a regulator is also there to monitor the repayment of loans and advances by the borrowing customers. If the first month installment, when it is delayed until the next installment is due, that means after 60 days, at the time of 60 days, it is going to a category, it has to be categorized, the entire loan has to be categorized, under special mention, a category created by the central bank. The banker or the financial institution who lent the money has to create a special category account called special mention category, and that loan has to be transferred to that special mention category because it is no evident that the installment due has been delayed for a month. So that means from the last installment paid or the first installment due date, it is up to 6 days. It is identified as a special mention category. Then from 61st day up to 90 days, it is going to overdue customer category, overdue category. Special mention, then overdue. Then from 90th day, 91st day onward, it is going to past due category. So likewise, there are categories to be identified for defaulting customers. And then when the installments are not delivered or not paid in time, the whole loan or the advance taken by that particular customer has to be categorized under these particular special categories. So this is easier for the credit administration departments of each bank or financial institution also to identify how much is in special mention category and how much in overdue category and how much in past due category when they are compartmentalized or when they are counted in separate portfolios of this nature, special mention, overdue and past due. So the recovery departments, thereafter loan recovery departments also can be given the task of recovering special mention, overdue, past due customers separately and with complete job descriptions. They could visit the customer, they could visit the properties that they manage, businesses that they manage, and then look for ways and means of recovery. Then second point, keep inventory levels low. Now, inventory levels are the resources needed for the production of resources needed for the business or raw material or working capital. Now, buying inventories and buying resources in bulk and keeping in stores and in other places that it is going to lock up the funds that are in the business or the working capital is going to be locked up. So therefore, a concept called just-in-time has emerged, and then the just-in-time supply of resources then has to be arranged, and then it is a different art to be to manage the supply chain of various materials and supply of resources has to be arranged specifically just in time when they are needed for production or use by the respective institution. Then as a result, the locking up of funds, unnecessary locking up of funds in the working capital is reduced. The delay payment of liabilities, payment of various liabilities such as utility bills, and then also in some cases loans obtained, if they can delay the payment of installments with arrangements, then that also can be a best advantage to the financial institution on the point of view of the cash management. However, when it comes to the banks and financial institutions, finance companies, this is not going to be an option, because to maintain the reputation of the bank or the financial institution, finance company, the utility bills and other loan installment, the other payables has to be made right on time. If not, the reputation can be damaged. The reputation is going to be affected. The reputation in such cases of the bank or the finance company is going to be looked at differently, and then the moment that it's going to be in the public domain or public news that such an institution has not paid their electricity bills, or has not paid their salaries for the employees, or has not paid some other dues, meaning it could be taken as a sign that they are encountering liquidity problems. So therefore, to safeguard the reputation, financial institutions particularly has to meet their payment obligations right on time. Common cash management products are offered by the banks. Now we discuss about this check outsourcing, issuance of checks. Now companies and other individuals, entities also can use these facilities to manage their cash management as well by check outsourcing. For example, if there is one company who has few hundred or few thousands of employees, if the salaries are to be paid by way of check, then they can instruct a bank to issue checks favoring each and every employee and supply them with the individual salary amounts, and that particular bank can write checks and either send it to the employee themselves or send it to their banker who maintains the bank account for each and every employee. So such services again can be obtained from banking institutions for a fee. This is despite the check imaging and truncation, or CITS, is being used by the respective bank or financial institution for their cash management purposes. They also use same facilities to help out their customers at a fee. The real-time gross settlement system, or RTGS, again is used and is known as high value payment system in Sri Lanka. And then of course cost of per message is starting from 1,000 rupees to about 5,000 rupees, depending on the value transferred and then complexity involved. So therefore, again, whilst RTGS system is being used for the particular financial institution benefit, they can also use that to support their corporate customers to help out their cash management issues as well. Payroll and vendor payment via slips. So like I said, the salaries of large employee numbers can also be through Sri Lanka Interbank Payment System or SLIPS or Common Electronic Fund Transfer System or SEFT. The difference is RTGS is high price, high cost per transaction, but SLIPS and SEFT is at a very low cost of per transaction. Something like SLIPS is something like 50 rupees per transaction, and then SEFT is something like 30 rupees per. Internet banking and ATMs can be used for inter-account transfers. Now, it has come to a stage where through the ATMs and the internet banking, you can transfer money to a customer of another bank as well, as at a cost of something like just near 30 rupees. So such transfers using the ATM network or internet banking connections is possible, and they have been developed to that extent right now. The third-party fund transfers, web applications. I was mentioning the names, few names, Sampath Vishwa and HNB Solo and then HNB Online Banking. So such web applications can be used from anywhere in the world if you have the access and the password to connect. Then the third-party fund transfers also can be effected. Pay order requests, pay orders and drafts are official checks issued by the banks. The difference between the bank's official checks and the individual checks are that individual checks, when they are received by a third party, they are not sure whether actually the check can be honored or not, because the individual account on which the check was issued may have funds or may not have funds. But when a bank issues a pay order or a draft, official check, to safeguard the reputation of the bank, definitely on presentation, the bank will honor the check. That belief and that experience is there with the general public. So therefore, pay order and the drafts are more popular, but the banks charge something like 500 rupees for draft or per pay order to issue. And the pay orders or drafts will be signed by two responsible officers of the bank, and it will be addressed to the beneficiary to whom the funds need to be paid. That outward derivative transfer, fund transfers, local and foreign, basically outward fund transfers are done through SWIFT. We explained what is SWIFT in a previous class, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. They are again to meet the cost of maintenance of SWIFT system and the preparation and then transmitting of SWIFT message, the cost involved, the SWIFT message, outward transfers, outward auto-telegraphic fund transfers could cost something like 1,000 rupees to 5,000 rupees, depending on the circumstances and the value. Then we are trying to step into the preparation of cash flows. Now, these financial institutions particularly maintain several cash flows for various currencies, mainly for local currency or home currency. And then whatever the other currency that they handle, they also do maintain cash flows. So there are inflows, income, or sale proceeds mentioned as with a plus sign, or as to denote that they are coming into the organization, or the nostro vostro, or the account of the organization. The funds are expected. So the cash flow is going to be with a prefix of plus. Then outflows or expenses or purchase of or material or such things, when the funds are outgoing, usually such figures are always going to be with sign of minus to denote that the funds are expected to go out. So then currency-wise on each currency, then these cash flows are prepared, consolidated into one currency or home currency. When cash flows for currencies other than the home currency are prepared, usually the home currency equivalent is also stated alongside the foreign currency amount received or paid. And finally, for the end of the day, those foreign currency cash flows, rupee values or home currency values are also transferred to the home currency cash flow to understand what is the net cash flow position. All entries with prior information to the treasury. Now, when there are several units and branches responsible for transacting and initiating inflows and outflows for the funds for the organization in each of those currencies, there should be a mechanism to inform the treasury, the person or personnel who manages the cash flows, that such transaction is bound to take place, whether it's inflow or outflow. Because without informing to the person who manages the cash flow, manages meaning when there is outflow expected, there should be adequate funds provided to meet the outflow. At the same time, when there is an inflow expected, the information should go to the person who manages the cash flow to invest that excess money that is going to receive. Otherwise, that amount of money is going to be idling and loss of interest. So currently, in the banking and financial institutions, they employ core banking systems or computer systems. So such systems facilitate preparation of cash flows as and when a transaction is recorded. As and when a transaction is recorded, such activity is again posted on the respect to cash flows on real time. So therefore, using the computer systems, it has become a tremendous advantage to update the cash flows along with the processing of transaction at whatever the business unit or branch that the transaction occurs. Then the treasury should be alert for uninformed, suddenly appearing items. There can be, with whatever the sophistication, still there can be uninformed funds coming in, uninformed funds going out. So it could be due to a human error or a technical error that the computer system transaction has not come into the cash flows as expected. So again, the treasury personnel who manage the cash flow must be alert, and then act quickly when an uninformed transaction happens in the respect to cash flow. Ideally, computer spreadsheets and dashboards are used to inform the immediate management and the CEO and board subcommittees and the ALCO of the cash flow positions expected for the day, next day, and for the immediate future, so that the liquidity is managed that way, and all the parties, all the authorities are informed that the cash portion in respect to cash flows, and then overall the home currency cash flow. Cash flow forecasting. Cash flow forecast is a projection of an organization's future financial position based on anticipated payments and receivables. We collect information of all the cash flows for foreseeable future and ensure accuracy of information. The accuracy of information must be established. Decide how far out you want to plan for cash flow. Planning can cover anything from a week, from few weeks to many months. Then list all your income for each week or month in your cash flow forecast. List all the cash you have got coming in, and then list all your outgoings, then work out your running cash flow. Now, as you know, and as you would have understood, cash flow accounting to the nearest cent is very important. And then also the time or the date, value date, that is the fund moment is expected, is also utmost important, because paying less or paying more than expected amount and paying in advance or paying late as against the expected date is also going to be costly, and the reputation can be damaged to that extent. Any questions on the cash flows? Cash flow management is easy, isn't it? Easy to understand. And then, but the responsibility is great. Responsibility is really great. To the working capital management, working capital, as you understand, is really the funds required for running of a business. Working capital is equal to current assets minus current liabilities. Current assets or liquid assets minus the short-term liabilities. Short-term liquid assets remaining after short-term liabilities have been paid off. That's called the working capital. It is a measure of a company's short-term liquidity and is important for performing financial analysis, financial modeling, and managing cash flows. What this equation explains is that the current liabilities or the dues, payment out, has to be met by the liquid current assets, that the maturity of the current assets. And then if by any chance, if there is a shortfall or the value of current assets, current liabilities are more than the current assets that are maturing, in that case, there's urgent need of funds by the difference between the higher current liabilities and the low amount of current assets that are maturing. If that amount of funds is not mobilized, not recouped, not brought in quickly, then the business cannot move forward. The business cannot move forward. Now, good example is that after the COVID pandemic, remember the central bank announced a working capital loan facility at the rate of 4% for the business enterprises. And the news is that the figures published by the central bank, the banking system has granted something like 25 billion rupees of such working capital loans at the rate of 4%, 25 billion. Meaning, because of the COVID pandemic and because of the lockdowns, there are particularly the small and medium scale entrepreneurs to manage their outflows, cash outflows. They needed 25 billion rupees after realizing the short-term liquid assets that they have to meet those payments out or liabilities. So that amount of 25 billion was supplied by the banking system to the small and medium scale entrepreneurs, and those funds were provided by the central bank. So likewise, the banks and finance companies too have to find this kind of liquid current assets to meet their current liability obligations or to meet the liabilities arising in the short term. So to find out such requirement of working capital, financial analysis and financial modeling and cash flows properly prepared helps a lot. The working capital and the reputation. Working capital is a financial metric representing operating liquidity available to an organization, along with fixed assets such as plant and equipment. Working capital is considered a part of operating capital. Cost of working capital and optimum level of working capital is very important. Luckily, soon after the pandemic, central bank came forward to lend at 4%. Otherwise, those entities could not meet the current liabilities, has to either go down or to finance at high cost, maybe at 8, 9, 10 or 11 or sometimes even higher rates. Then optimum level of working capital has to be maintained, because it's pointless keeping higher working capital that will only add to the cost or that to the P&L and then lower the profit. Impact on reputation. When current liabilities are not honored, particularly by the financial institutions, the reputation is going to be very, very bad. So therefore, it is particularly applicable to the financial institutions, but it is applicable to other entities as well. If the current liabilities cannot be paid off, then one cannot think of a tomorrow for that institution to function as usual. Working capital management briefly. A well-run firm manages its short-term debt and current and future operational expenses through its management of working capital. Components of working capital are the inventories, the resources that are required, then the account receivables, the asset side, the short-term assets that are maturing and receivable, then account payables, the liabilities of short-term nature that should be paid out, and cash. Particularly in these, number 1 and 3, that's inventories and then account payables, are going to be with a minus sign. Account receivables and cash available are going to be with a plus sign. So one can put some figures and then arrive at the working capital requirement of any organization. Now, this liquidity gap analysis, I have brought here an example of an organization, financial organization, to explain better how the cash flow and then liquidity gap analysis or the maturity bucket analysis is performed. In the first horizontal bar, you find the category here, asset or liability category here, on the first column. Then starting from the second column, less than 7-day maturity, less than 7-day maturity in the first time bucket. But you can choose, many organizations choose next day or tomorrow pump funds here at the first column. But here, for example, we have taken as less than 7 days, then 7 days to 30 days, then 1 month to 3 months, 3 months to 6 months, 6 months to 12 months, then 1 year to 5 years, sorry, 1 year to 3 years, then 3 years to 5 years, then 5 years and over, and then unclassified as well. Finally, under each category, you have a grand total at the last column. And on the other side, you have the total assets maturing on the first part, giving the total on the row just beneath the time bucket indicated. Then the liabilities given on the bottom part, giving the total liabilities in here in the highlighted row. Then finally, you have the difference between the assets, maturing and liabilities maturing, given here. Assets minus liabilities given here at the maturity gap. Then finally, you have the cumulative gap, the cumulative balance plus the figure of the gap for the period total up at the last row. Just to run through this example as an example to demonstrate how it works. In each of this category, the figures are posted. The figures are posted. And the total is highlighted here on the asset category. And in here, the liability side, starting from demand deposits, current accounts, the savings deposits maturing on the first time bucket, and restricted deposits or the time deposit also given here. So you might observe that the first time bucket less than 7 days itself is a minus 125 billion. And then you would observe that these demand deposits and the time deposits are given in here, a big number, 235 billion and then 64 billion, and nothing is posted on the rest of the buckets. Finally, the total is given here at the same total as appearing in the less than 7 days column, which means that is the problem here, why we have a huge shortfall of 125 billion on the first time bucket itself. Why do I say that? Now, as you know, the current account deposits and the savings deposits, although technically they are of on-demand nature, any savings deposit customer and any current account customer can walk up to his or her bank and ask for the money to be drawn then and there. But do we experience that every day? What we experience every day is that certain percentage, something like about 5% of the total current account deposits and then savings deposits are withdrawn on a daily basis. But at the same time, with the expansion of the economy and then on day to day, day by day, new deposits also come in, provided you maintain a good reputation. If the reputation is damaged, then new deposits may not come. At the same time, there can be increased withdrawal of the already existing deposits. So one material factor to maintain is that good reputation. without damaging the reputation, if the day-to-day activities are carried out, the current account deposits and the savings account deposits, the amount of withdrawal is going to be less than 5% or less than 3% on a daily basis. And then even that amount can be reduced by way of new deposit that have been attracted. So therefore, that is how normal financial institutions work. So therefore, a studied decision has to be made what percentage of current account or demand deposits and then savings deposits are going to be taken on the first time bucket, less than 7 days. Say, supposing if they decide to take 5% of the total, then 5% of 235 billion and 5% of 65 billion. Balance money also can be spread around these time buckets, and then unclassified can be about 50% or more of this total current account deposits and then savings account deposits. So only about up to 50% sometimes is spread between these time buckets, and then about 5% only will come to less than 7-day time bucket. So if that way the figures are adjusted, then this can be a plus figure. Why? This amount of 313 billion liabilities maturing can be lower by 95% of these two, 235 billion and 64 billion. So therefore, this can be a plus figure. Shall we say it's going to be a plus figure of about 100 billion, plus figure of about 100 billion. Then the cumulative gap also going to be the 100 million plus. And what will happen is this particular financial institution will have 100 billion to lend in the interbank call money market or to buy treasury bills and bonds. They have 100 billion, but they must ensure that the 7-day to 30-day time bucket also has a positive gap. It has about 82 billion. And then that gap can be little lower when a percentage of this current account and savings account deposits come here. So therefore, all those calculations has to happen. And finally, treasury transactions can take place as given in the estimated figures. But the treasury dealers and front office guys will have to ensure that these figures are checked for accuracy and whether they are really on the correct in the value terms and also correct in the value date wise. One other small factor that is to be mentioned here, this is going to be a dynamic document prepared by the Treasury as well as using the computer systems and with the assistance of the entire operation network of the organization. Each branch, each unit, business unit has to support in terms of accuracy of value and then time. If that happens, then this dynamic document will help proper cash management of the organization without incurring additional interest cost, and then helping to earn maximum interest income by way of investment of each and every additional rupee that is available. So this document then again can be further developed into a P&L forecast. If this structure is properly improved, giving two additional columns after each of this time bucket. First column is to the same, this column is to give the amount of cash in or out as the case may be. If it is the asset maturing in, if it is the liability maturing out, then the second additional column is to indicate the rate of interest that this particular asset or the liability is going to, if it is in the case of asset, interest income. If it is in the case of liability, interest expense. And the third additional column, this figure minus the rate of interest worked out in the case of assets, interest income, in the case of liability, interest expense. So the last row will have interest income minus interest expense, and the net profit interest earning, interest earning or interest expense, net interest earning or net interest expense for that particular time bucket. So likewise, if you are able to list the rate of interest for assets and rate of interest for liabilities and the actual interest income for assets and actual interest expense for liabilities, and the net interest income or expense at the bottom, you would know actually the forecast P&L interest earnings or interest expenses for that time bucket. And that would also help the dealers to manage the interest income or interest expense beforehand. It occurs because this statement is a dynamic document and then futuristic or estimated in the interest income and expenses. So therefore, this document is not going to help with regard to the liquidity management, where in whatever the time bucket that is short in liquidity, like in the case of 1 to 3 months here, there is shortfall, and 3 to 6 months also shortfall. So those can be funded either by getting more assets to mature or maturing liabilities to be shifted or lowered, or else from the cumulative cash flow. At the same time, as I explained, it can be also used to give us a picture of future interest income and expenses on the respective time bucket. And then the treasury dealers are given ready-made figures, estimated figures to replenish the short of income or excess of interest expense, and then make that particular time bucket profitable. Imagine after 3 months or 6 months, if that scenario is observed by preparation of this statement, then before 3 months or 6 months itself, we can take action to make that particular time bucket profitable. Thereby, the profitability also can be managed. And this involves, for example, if there is short of liabilities in the after 6 month period at a very low cost, you can negotiate or discuss and arrange with the marketing department to structure a special, something like a children's savings account, a special children's savings account, or some other special savings type accounts, and give them a target to mobilize that X amount of money required in that 6 months time bucket from now onwards. So the marketing department can work tirelessly from now onwards, structuring the type of deposit that you need, fixing the interest rate at the lowest possible cost, and marketing it, selling them or distributing leaflets, and then going door to door or whatever, market them, and then collect additional funds to the amount that is required. So these type of activities and planning are taking place in the banking and financial organizations even right now. So to make such decisions, this type of dynamic document preparations has to evolve. I'm sure most of the organization has, but to put them or bring them to the nearest accurate figures, it takes a long time, because when the complexity of operations is more in banking and financial service organizations, then it is very difficult to achieve high degree of accuracy by way of value and by way of time. So we are almost time up. So let us discuss the other slides on the next Tuesday. But however, I want to know whether you all understood this type of cash management techniques up to now. These are more technical mechanics that now usually treasuries employ. And then maybe at higher levels of treasury management, but preparing these documents are mostly done by the junior level management of the treasuries usually in banks. Any question, any comment? No? Sounds like everything has been understood. Now, Kavindi, you have sent me a mail. Is it a draft of your assignment?
Yes.
Draft. How many pages you have done? You have done quite a few pages, but a lot of graphs. Okay, let me have a look and then respond to you. It's a 10-page document, right? Okay, thank you very much. And then let's see. How others also can send me draft assignments. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Then have a good day.